Well, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's a totally glamorous life. I think people don't really understand how hard we work. I mean, everybody on the show.
Ben Jones never got to see the Braves play the Yankees that Sunday. At 84, the man who played Cooter Davenport for all 7 seasons of the Dukes of Hazzard died suddenly at his Virginia home, leaving behind a career that spanned television and Congress, and a lifelong connection to the show that made him famous. Then, Tom Wopat shared a tribute that contained one word fans couldn't ignore: another. It hinted at a much bigger story surrounding the surviving cast and the losses that have reshaped the Dukes of Hazzard family. What does that word really tell us? Join us as we uncover the story. The show that became a phenomenon. The Dukes of Hazzard was never supposed to be a cultural institution. It was planned as a 9-episode mid-season replacement for CBS's 1979 lineup, the kind of show that networks order to fill a gap in the schedule and expect to quietly disappear when the regular programming returns. What CBS did not anticipate was that American audiences in January 1979 would sit down with Bo and Luke Duke, watch them tear across a fictional Georgia county in an orange 1969 Dodge Charger, painted with the Confederate flag and named the General Lee, and decide immediately that this was what they had been waiting for. The show hit number 2 in the Nielsen ratings in its first full season, trailing only Dallas, the juggernaut primetime soap that followed it on CBS on Friday nights, and the combination of those 2 shows made Friday night on CBS the most watched evening on American television. The Dukes of Hazzard ran for 7 full seasons across 147 episodes from January 26, 1979 to February 8, 1985, and it did so with a consistency of audience loyalty that most television shows of any era would find enviable. The premise was straightforward enough to explain in a sentence. Bo and Luke Duke, portrayed by John Schneider and Tom Wopat, respectively, were 2 cousins on probation in the fictional Hazzard County, Georgia, who could not carry firearms as a condition of their probation, but who spent every episode outwitting the corrupt boss Hogg and his bumbling accomplice, Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane. What the premise does not capture is the show's tone, which was warm, comedic, and genuinely felt, full of car chases and stunts and physical comedy that was executed with enough craft to feel impressive rather than silly. The General Lee became arguably the most famous car in television history. Waylon Jennings narrated every episode as the balladeer while performing the show's iconic theme song, Good Old Boys. Catherine Bach as Daisy Duke became one of the most recognizable figures in American pop culture. The show was, by any measure, a genuine phenomenon. And the cast that built it was a community. The relationships formed over 7 seasons of shooting in Georgia and on Warner Brothers lots persisted across the decades after the show ended, surfacing in reunion films, fan events, public tributes, and the kind of ongoing personal contact that most professional relationships do not survive the end of a project. Ben Jones's Cooter's Place Museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, became the physical center of that community, a place where the cast and the fans could coexist in the same space, where the show's legacy had a physical home, and where Ben Jones himself was a regular and enthusiastic presence. That physical home and the community it represented is what makes Ben Jones's death something that Tom Wopat's word, another, captured more accurately than any longer tribute could have. What had the Dukes of Hazzard cast already lost before August 2026? And who was Cooter Davenport to the show and to the people who made it? What made Ben Jones different? Ben Jones did not walk into Hazzard County as an actor looking for his break. He came in as someone who had already been building a life too full and too varied to belong to any single category. And Cooter Davenport was an expression of who he actually was, rather than a role he was performing from the outside in. He was born in 1941 in Tarboro, North Carolina, and came of age in the American South during the years when the South was both the most beautiful and the most troubled part of the country simultaneously. He found his way to acting through theater and built a screen career in the 1970s that connected him to Guy Waldron, the writer and director, who created Moonrunners in 1975, a film about Georgia bootleggers that was narrated by Waylon Jennings and that served as the direct creative ancestor of the Dukes of Hazzard. Ben played a federal agent in Moonrunners. When Guy Waldron reconceived the bootlegger premise for television and brought Waylon along with him, he brought Ben too. Cooter Davenport appeared in 142 episodes of the Dukes of Hazzard across all 7 seasons. His garage in Hazzard County Square, located directly across from Sheriff Roscoe's office, was not just a plot convenience, it was the physical and practical heart of the Duke family's operation. Every time the General Lee needed emergency repairs, every time Bo and Luke needed someone in their corner who could appear at the right moment with the right tool, Cooter was there. His CB handle was Crazy Cooter, and he opened his transmissions with a catchphrase that the show's audience could recite in their sleep. Breaker one, I might be crazy, but I ain't dumb. The humor in that line, the self-deprecating bravado of someone who understood exactly how he looked to the world and was entirely unbothered by it, captured something essential about who Ben Jones was as a person. Ben was cast in The Dukes of Hazzard in the late 1970s and remained a main cast member until the show's conclusion in 1985. And during those 7 years, the relationship between his character and the Duke family built a loyalty that the audience found completely convincing because the actors themselves had built a version of it. He was not a blood Duke, as the show made clear, but he was family in every functional sense of the word. Tom Wopat's tribute captured this exactly. Denver Pyle, who played Uncle Jesse, used to tell Ben, "I'm not your Uncle Jesse," as a joke precisely because the emotional reality of their relationship on set had enough warmth to sustain the tease. After the show ended in 1985, Ben made a choice that nobody else in the cast made. He ran for Congress. He had been politically engaged throughout his adult life as a Democrat from the South, and the show's popularity had given him recognition that translated directly into political viability. He ran for Georgia's 4th Congressional District in 1986 and lost narrowly to incumbent Pat Swindoll. He ran again in 1988, this time winning by 20 points after Swindoll was indicted on perjury charges. He won again in 1990. He served 2 full terms representing Georgia in the United States House of Representatives before redistricting cost him his seat in 1994 when he lost to Newt Gingrich. The man who had played a mechanic who fixed cars in a fictional Georgia county had genuinely represented real Georgia constituents in the federal legislature, and he never treated either chapter of his life as more important than the other. He went back to the show, reprising Cooter in the 1997 reunion movie and the 2000 Hazzard in Hollywood Special. He opened Cooter's Place in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, a museum dedicated to the show and its history, and maintained it as an active fan destination for decades. He showed up for his castmates' memorials and tributes and fan events with the same reliable presence that Cooter had shown up for the Dukes across 7 seasons of Hazzard County Trouble. That consistency, maintained across 40 years, is what made his death something that required a specific word from Tom Wopat to properly contain. The word that says everything about what the cast has already lost. When Tom Wopat posted his tribute to Ben Jones on Instagram and wrote that the Dukes of Hazzard had lost another integral part of their cast, every person who had been paying attention to what that cast had experienced across the decades since the show ended, understood immediately what the word meant and how much weight it carried. Tom wrote, "The Dukes of Hazzard lost another integral part of their cast today. Ben Jones was a fine friend and a fierce advocate of all the best things we can offer in the entertainment business. He will be sorely missed." Denver Pyle frequently said to Ben, "I'm not your Uncle Jesse, but I feel like we lost a Duke cousin today." By the time Ben Jones died in August 2026, the list of people who had made the Dukes of Hazzard what it was, and who were no longer there to be part of whatever the franchise's ongoing story was, had grown long enough to demand that specific word. Sorrel Booke died in 1994 from colorectal cancer at 64 years old. Sorrel had been the person the show had asked to carry the most contradictory assignment. Boss Hogg needed to be corrupt enough to generate genuine conflict and bumbling enough to be funny. And Booke had calibrated that balance with enough skill that the character became iconic. He was gone 9 years after the show ended, before any reunion film had been made. Denver Pyle, who played Uncle Jesse, the patriarch around whom the entire Duke family moral universe organized itself, died on Christmas Day, 1997, from lung cancer at 77 years old, less than 2 weeks after receiving his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The timing of his Walk of Fame star arriving so close to his death has the quality of a life being properly recognized at almost exactly the last possible moment. He had been in the Dukes of Hazzard reunion film earlier that year, which meant the cast had one more chance to be together with him before he was gone. Waylon Jennings, whose voice was as much a character in the Dukes of Hazzard as any human face on screen, died in February 2002 from complications of diabetes at 64 years old. The Balladier's narration had been the show's moral and narrative conscience, the voice that told you what was really happening and what it meant, while General Lee was doing something physically improbable in the background. Losing Jennings was losing the voice of the show in the most literal possible sense. James Best, who played Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane, died in April 2015 from pneumonia at 88 years old. Best had been the person who made Roscoe something more than a villain. The bumbling, vaguely lovable quality he gave the character meant that every episode where Roscoe failed to catch the Dukes felt like a shared joke between the character and the audience, rather than a defeat of the antagonist. He was a trained, experienced character actor whose work on Dukes of Hazzard reached an audience that dwarfed anything else he had done in a career spanning 6 decades. Rick Hurst, who played Deputy Cletus Hogg and who had appeared at Cooter's place just 1 week before his death, died in June 2025 at 79 from causes that his family did not publicly specify but described as unexpected. Ben Jones had been the one to confirm Hurst's death to Fox News Digital, calling it very shocking and hurtful, noting that Hurst had just been with them the week before. Jones said Hurst was a great human being, good-hearted, generous, always a friend he would stick up for. 13 months after confirming Rick Hurst's death to the press, Ben Jones himself was gone. The person who had been the voice of the Dukes of Hazzard community for decades, who had run the museum and confirmed the deaths and written the tributes, had become the person being mourned in a tribute written by Tom Wopat. So who was left? And what did each of them say when Ben Jones died? The tributes that arrived. The cast of the Dukes of Hazzard that remains after Ben Jones's death is considerably smaller than the one that assembled for the last time in various reunion contexts across the years. And the geography of who is still here reveals something about the strange arithmetic of time and television. Tom Wopat, who is 74 years old in 2026, posted his tribute within hours of the news breaking, and has continued to appear in films and television across the years since Dukes ended, maintaining an active screen career alongside the country music he has pursued seriously since the 1980s. His recent film work, including a 2026 appearance in Win Place Love, suggests someone who has stayed genuinely engaged with his craft rather than trading exclusively on the nostalgia value of his most famous role. John Schneider, who played Bo Duke alongside Tom Wopat's Luke, was also among those who responded to Ben's death, and his trajectory since the show ended has taken him through music. He launched a country music career in 1981 while still on the show, television including a prominent role as Jonathan Kent in Smallville, and an ongoing screen presence that has kept him visible across multiple generations of audiences who may or may not know he was ever Bo Duke. Catherine Bach, who played Daisy Duke, and whose image became one of the most reproduced in American pop culture history during the show's peak, has been considerably more private in the decades since the show ended, but her connection to the cast and her response to losses within the Dukes family have remained warm and consistent. Waylon Jennings, grandson of country music legend Waylon Jennings, also mourned Ben Jones's death publicly, describing a relationship that extended well beyond their shared Dukes of Hazzard connection. Jones had helped finance Jennings's first recorded live album, playing a meaningful role in the singer-songwriter's career. Another thread in the web of personal relationships that Ben Jones had maintained across the decades as someone who genuinely cared about the people in his orbit rather than just the professional connections. The museum he left behind, Cooter's Place in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, is now a monument to a man who ran it rather than simply to the show it celebrates. The fan events he organized, the appearances he maintained, the tributes he wrote for fellow cast members he outlived for as long as he did, are all now part of what Alma Viator called his most amazing, rich, full life. She was right that it was full. He had done more different things and left more different kinds of marks than most people who spend their whole careers in one lane. The question that Ben Jones's death raises, and that Tom Wopat's word "another" makes unavoidable, is what the Dukes of Hazzard actually was to the people who made it. So what made it special? What the show built that the network never planned for? CBS ordered 9 episodes of a mid-season replacement. What actually got built was considerably harder to describe and considerably more durable than anything a network order specifies. The Dukes of Hazzard was, at its structural foundation, a show about family loyalty, about 2 cousins who would do anything for each other and for the uncle who raised them, in a community where the institutional authority was corrupt and the honest people had to find ways around it to survive. That premise resonated in 1979 with an American audience that had recently experienced Watergate, that understood in a very current way what it looked like when official authority behaved dishonestly, and that found the Dukes' cheerful, car-chasing, non-violent resistance entirely satisfying. The show was number 2 in the Nielsen's in its first full season and remained one of CBS's most reliable performers across its run, generating enough merchandise revenue during its peak that Warner Brothers pulled all licensed Dukes of Hazzard products from shelves after 2015 complaints about the Confederate flag on the General Lee. That decision, nearly 30 years after the show ended, removing merchandise because of the flag on the car, revealed something about the show's ongoing cultural presence that no normal television series maintains 4 decades after its final episode. Ben Jones himself was complicated on the subject of the flag, and his complexity on it was one of the things that made him interesting as a public figure. He was a Southern Democrat who had genuinely represented a Georgia district in Congress, who understood the regional cultural context the show was made in, and had some sympathy for the tradition the flag represented to certain fans, while also acknowledging the legitimate pain it caused to others. He was not a simple person, and his relationship with the show's most controversial element was not simple either. He engaged with it publicly and tried to maintain the conversation rather than either dismissing the concerns or fully capitulating to pressure, a position that made him a target for criticism. That complexity was part of what made his death mean something different from the death of a television personality who never existed outside their famous role. Tom Wopat understood that when he wrote that Ben Jones was a fine friend and a fierce advocate of all the best things we can offer in the entertainment business. The tribute is not to Cooter Davenport. It is to Ben Jones, who happened to have played Cooter Davenport for 7 seasons, while also being a man who financed a young musician's first album, who ran for Congress twice and won, who built a museum and staffed it and showed up for it, who told the world when his colleagues died, and now needed someone else to tell the world when he did. Now that you know the full story of who Ben Jones was beyond Cooter Davenport, does his loss feel different to you than just another celebrity passing? And who do you think carries the Dukes of Hazzard legacy forward now? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.